destination. Let me just take you back last year, 2023. CNN did name Uganda amongst the top tourism destinations globally. And of course, this is not just a milestone to talk about. This is a milestone where we are definitely looking at as a country that is aiming to grow from the socio-economic aspect of things, but also from the tourism basket. But in the same regard, in 2023, the figures show there was an increase in international travels or international inbound tourists, about 56%. That is close to 1.2 million 1.2 million international tourist arrivals in the country. How can we sustain these numbers and how can we increase the numbers? And from the personal perspective, on Saturday, I got the privilege of attending the Mountain Elgon Half Marathon, and I can tell you the beauty about Uganda in every region. When you look at the various forms of tourism that we do have here, culture tourism, look at adventure, you look at the food, you look at the landscape, there's lots to do with the tourism attractions that we do have as a country. And to you, our dear viewer, we are inviting you again tonight to be part of this using the hashtag UBC Frontbench. But well, it can be a show where we do not have the main characters, the minister and the permanent secretary. But first, allow me to introduce the State Minister of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities. This is Honorable Bahinduka Mugara Martin, who does join us here on the show. Good evening, Honorable, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Paul Ssonko, for having us, and good evening to the viewers out there.
Well, indeed, and it's our pleasure having you here on the show, and we are glad you have joined us as well. Now, with the State Minister, we have the Permanent Secretary of the same Ministry, Ms. Doreen Katusime, who also joins us this evening. A very good evening, Permanent Secretary. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Joram. Good evening, our viewers, and looking forward to a lively discussion.
Well, indeed, and I can only assure you matters to do with tourism have to be exciting and rather adventurous, if I should say. So sit back at the front this evening. We want to explore Uganda, so come at the front. Let's explore Uganda virtually, but also looking into the initiatives that government has to say. Welcome to the front bench.
Fellow countrymen and women, these are our ministers and permanent secretaries at the front bench, representing the various ministries and answering the questions that matter to us. Join the conversation. This is the front bench.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
This is the front bench.
Zero 0709602592 is the WhatsApp number where you can share your opinions and the questions that you have for my guest this evening. And you can also use the hashtag UBC Frontbench if you want to be part of the show. That is via X. We're also streaming live on YouTube. That is UBC TV Live. So you can be part of what we are conversing or the kind of discussion we are having here live from Broadcast House and Nile Avenue. Welcome on board. We are talking matters tourism. Just about 3 years ago, a friend of mine introduced me to tourism in Uganda. I wasn't so much as a tour person, but then during COVID, I learned so many things about Uganda's tourism sector. And I'm so glad that he might be one of those who are watching this show this evening. But first, let's get into the questions that we have for the Minister, as we also wait for what you have as our viewer this very evening. Honorable Martin, again, looking into Uganda's tourism, let's try to look into how we have positioned ourselves as a global tourism destination, and how far we have gone, and what plans do we have to sustain this?
Thank you, Paul. First of all, as a Minister of Tourism, like clearly said in the introduction or the naming, tourism,
yes,
wildlife and antiquities. One of the major mandates really is to conserve the wildlife bit, the tourism aspect, basically the beauty that has been given to this beautiful country, to help generate revenue, contribute to our GDP, and also improve the well-being of our communities. And there are various ways we are doing, we are undertaking as a ministry to achieve this and to enhance our contribution to GDP. One of them, of course, is the conservation of the wildlife, despite the various challenges. I think we'll discuss them going forward. But it's to manage this, grow it, and see how we can attract more foreign people, but also the Ugandans visit and spend some more money, but also develop the other various products. Because one of the main things, in a nutshell, if we just described who a tourist is really, is that someone who goes, has an experience, probably pay for it and stays over a period of time, therefore bringing in revenue. So what we are trying to do the most is see how best we can make the most out of a visitor who has come to the country, for instance. And one of the things to do this is to develop as many products as there is. They're already there. What we need to do, or what we are trying to do as a Minister of Tourism, is to see how we develop them better. If you look at, for instance, the new products that we have now, the source of the Nile, the hot springs, the new equator monuments, so that when someone comes here, stay longer, have a much better experience, be encouraged to come back, but also encourage others to come. So one of the things we are doing is to develop these products as many as we can manage to, but also the marketing bit of it. It's one thing to have all these products, beautiful part of Africa, but how do you get the people to come and visit and spend this money here? One of the things that we're undertaking is marketing, and both through the ministry and the various agencies, including the Uganda Tourism Board, and also partnering with the private sector. I mean, going for various expos. Recently, we have an advert running on CNN, but even through influencers, and we also encourage the Ugandans to do this, help us do this. Like we say that the mandate of marketing this beautiful country shouldn't be for the PS, for the minister, or for UTB. Should be the responsibility of every Ugandan. Because, I mean, first of all, there's something good to talk about. Apart from only the negative, especially when we go politics, why don't we move around and share what this beautiful country has to offer? And I want to thank all the various media houses, including UBC, who have been part of this journey, and I want to encourage the others, please continue supporting Ugandans, continue traveling, continue tweeting. And we're not only focusing on the foreign market. One of the strategies we are taking is, and we learned this from COVID, because when we had the COVID challenge and the travel, international travel had been closed, we were hit so badly as Uganda because we hadn't fully focused on domestic tourism. Because you see, once you have the Ugandans traveling within, then you can keep the sector afloat to a certain extent. The hotels will not close, the restaurants will not close, the business will somehow continue. So one of the things we are focusing on is to have a more resilient tourism sector. So we are promoting both foreign travel, but also the domestic travel. And we've done a couple of campaigns over the years, and we've been to most of the regions with quite a number of Ugandans, and we've also seen the level of travelers, the Ugandans ones, improve to almost slightly above 1 million. Probably will hit around 2-3 million. So these are some of the initiatives that we are taking to see how we grow the tourism sector going forward.
And looking at the tourism industry or sector growing forward, let me bring in the Permanent Secretary now. When you look at the COVID-19, just 3 years back, sorry, the impact it had on the global economies, and also looking at the fact that the tourism sector was one of those that was strongly hit. If you can take us into the recovery process or the recovery plans that the ministry has been undertaking to ensure that we remain as a leading tourism destination, or amongst the leading tourism destinations on the African continent.
Thank you, Joram, for that question. I think, like you have rightly said, COVID must have had its worst impact on the tourism sector, because by its nature, tourism is about travel, it's about hospitality. Now, once travel stopped, hospitality closed, the impact was so bad. And we saw the numbers of tourists drop from, we had grown to about 1.5 million in 2019. In 2021, we had dropped to below 400,000. Now, the recovery, I must say the recovery has been very good. In some sectors, sub-sectors, we have actually surpassed the levels of 2019. But more importantly, what we have seen is that Ugandans, maybe because they didn't have a lot of choices during COVID, Ugandans have learned to travel more within Uganda. So we have seen the numbers of domestic tourism grow exponentially, but also the numbers of inbound tourism have grown. We have seen more non-residents visit our national parks. We have grown the numbers by over 50–60%. In some tourism sites like the Uganda Wildlife Education Center, we have seen a growth of over 100%. We have seen the numbers of our museum grow. So I would say that by end of this year, we'll probably have surpassed the figures of 2019. So the recovery has been good. Now, coming to what have we done and what do we intend to do? Like the minister was alluding to, what we are focusing on more as a sector, as a program, is not just growing the numbers, actually. The focus now is on enabling a tourist to stay longer and also to spend more. So even when the numbers may not have grown much bigger, but what can keep a tourist longer and spend more? And so that's why we are focusing more now on diversifying the tourism products. In other words, having more that can keep a tourist longer. So when we talk about diversifying the products, we are saying, let's, yes, conserve, because we conserve the natural and cultural heritage, but we need to focus a little more on other products that are not always the wildlife, because that's the biggest attraction. But culture, you just talked about the marathon.
Yes.
So we are going into adventure, we are looking more at cultural, we are looking more at cuisine, we are also focusing more on the meetings,
Okay.
the MICE sector. So we are growing all these other products and also improving the infrastructure, because that has been a key gap. And when I talk about we, I mean not just as a ministry, but as government. Because when you talk about infrastructure, you're looking at roads, you're looking at aerodromes, you're looking at ICT. So the other ministries which are part of this program, we work together to make sure that tourists can stay longer, enjoy more, and spend.
Oh. And let me get back to the minister. Honorable, when you look at the ministry and how it operates, one may wonder which agencies and departments are under it, and what are their specific roles? How do they differ, if you can break it down for the viewer?
Well, the Ministry of Tourism has a couple. Maybe I can just speak to them. We recently had a merger between Uganda Wildlife Education Center, commonly known as the zoo. That's the easiest for most Ugandans to understand, with Uganda Wildlife Authority, and now they are one. So work now is a conservation area under Uganda Wildlife Authority, but it maintains the same role and mainly to provide conservation education and also rescue for wildlife that is in danger. But also we have the Uganda Wildlife Authority on its own that looks at the wildlife in the various parks. We have around 10 national parks, around 12 wildlife reserves, plus a number of other conservation areas. But we also have a training aspect under the Ministry of Tourism. And the human resource is one of the issues we are looking at developing, because a tourist, when someone comes to hotel, it's not about only the physical building, but the service. Tourism is more of a service sector. So we have the Uganda Hotel Tourism and Training Institute in Jinja, where government has sunk a lot of money, and the World Bank project, SEDEP, I think over 40 billion also, to train well-qualified people to work within the tourism sector. Then we have the Uganda Tourism Board that speaks to mainly marketing, but also a bit of regulation in terms of the hotels, the tour operators that we have in the sector. You've had, because you see, once we leave it unregulated, being Ugandans, there are some that will take advantage. Probably someone pays money as a tourist and doesn't get the service when they come into the country. So there's a bit of registration of licensing by UTB, plus the marketing component. But also have the Uganda Wildlife Research and Training Institute in Kasese, and it also trains the students, especially on the research component, but also conservation and the tourism-related projects. So as a ministry, in a nutshell, that's what we do.
And Minister, we also have quite a number of competitors across the region when you look at matters tourism. One may wonder, what are our unique selling points from our tourism sector? What are those points in our tourism that kind of give us an advantage over the other global destinations?
Of course, the first is why they call us the Pearl of Africa.
Okay.
There is only one. It is only
the tagline alone.
Yes, it is only Uganda, and like we said, it was not called by we the Ugandans. It was by Winston Churchill, who, by the way, to date is still the most popular Briton to have ever lived. So after moving across the entire Africa, really, and he describes it. I don't want to go into that today, and calls Uganda the Pearl of Africa. So we're already unique. We have something no one else has, right from the people. I can tell, if you interact with most of the travelers that come here and have been around the region, they will tell you that they've not met friendly people like the Ugandan people. And this is a big selling point. We call ourselves the home to the big seven, not only five. Our neighbors have the five. We also have them, but we have the chimp and the gorilla here. And as you know, we have the highest population of the highland gorilla in the whole world, probably around 52–53%. Of course, we are the only source of the River Nile, coming out of the biggest freshwater lake in the entire Africa. But along it, I remember we were with some brothers from Zimbabwe and Zambia just a few days ago. But along the Nile, we have the most powerful waterfall in the whole world, called Makshon. And the food, I mean, trust me, I know sometimes we market East Africa as a block, but still there is some uniqueness about Uganda. There is nowhere you go to in the region, but in Africa, and you get as much organic food in plenty on just one serving of a meal like we do in Uganda. But also the weather, the beautiful sceneries. I can go on and on and on. But also, if you look at the Rwenzoris, for instance, Rwenzori must be the highest block mountain actually globally. So there are quite a number of things that we are selling. But like we say, and we've been saying, is that it is one thing to have all this beauty, but it's also another to take it out to the world. You can have a good product, but any product is as good as the numbers you get to come and see and appreciate the product. And that's what we are doing as a ministry, not only talk about the beauty, but to take it to everyone. And every time I speak, I'll still emphasize this. We request all the Ugandans to take up this responsibility, share the beauty of this country for everyone to see whenever you have a chance. And
PS, I would also wish to know from your side of things, 2023, the numbers increased. Inbound tourism. We're seeing a 56% increase, about 1.2 million of the tourists. CNN comes out to give us more of a better platform in regards to marketing. We've seen, you know, many people speaking highly about Uganda's tourism. But how do we sustain these numbers and how do we increase them?
By the way, when we talk about the increase, we were comparing with the year after COVID.
Yes, so that was...
so when you talk about the 56%,
56%,
people might think that we are talking about the
increase.
Pre-COVID, yeah. So we were talking about after COVID,
the numbers.
2021, 22, now 23 was actually the recovery year. Of course, we've recovered more even then in the 2024. So back to your question, and it goes back to what we were talking about. As a program, as a sector, we are focusing on like 5 major things. The first one is what the minister has just talked about: aggressively market and promote the destination. I think this financial year, for example, is the first time that government has provided financial resources to our missions abroad to market, to do commercial diplomacy. And government has, I think you've heard about the tenfold growth plan for government. Tourism is now number 2 among the 4. I think you've heard the president preach this every day. The ATMs, number 1 is agro-industrialization and 2 is tourism. So those are the sectors that government, of course followed by minerals and then science and technology. So government is focusing on those 4, not that it's not focusing on the others, but as the key sectors that will grow and take Uganda out of the peasant economy to the monetization, full monetization. So we as a program, together with all the other members of the program, are focusing on marketing. And when I'm talking about marketing, it's not just Uganda Tourism Board, the ministry or missions abroad. Local governments have been given money to profile all their districts and promote tourism. 2 is conservation. The minister had talked about that. We are increasing our efforts in conservation, in fighting against poaching and all other illegal activities. 3 is the skilling that the minister had talked about. We've had, I think, a serious gap there where we've had a shortage in skilled manpower. So you find that we've been importing a lot of people from within the region, but now we are skilling so that we can be highly competitive. And the other one is, of course, is the infrastructure, focusing on infrastructure.
Because it has come out as
it's a key.
The key thing, and many people change their minds once the infrastructure or the road network is poor.
Absolutely.
Many change their minds about where they want to go.
So government is focusing on doing the tourism roads. We may not be able to do all of them at a go, but like our president always says, prioritization. We had like 2,700 kilometers of tourism roads to do. I think we are now about 1,600. We are working on the aerodromes. As I speak now, we are about to start on doing an airport in Kidepo to attract the tourists on that side of the country. The aerodromes in Kasese, in Kisoro, the one in Kisoro has been expanded. So ICT, I think we have now connected most of the protected areas to internet. The other one, of course, is the product development that the minister was talking about. What we are trying to do is make sure that in every region, at least every financial year, we do something that will attract more people to that region. We are, for the first time, for example, doing infrastructure at source of the Nile, a pier where you have docking services and so on and so forth. So we are doing mainly those 5 focused areas to increase the number of tourists, but like I said earlier, they are stay and spend.
Right. And Honorable Minister, let's look into the campaigns that the ministry has come with over the years. We've seen, we once saw Visit Uganda. Now the current hot take is Explore Uganda. We've seen Explore Uganda moving region per region. We need to see what was the initial, plan of coming up with these particular campaigns. Have they reaped the results that the ministry wanted to have?
Of course they have, but just to maybe supplement what the PS said and just feed into the question. If you look at, for instance, because private sector plays a key role in tourism, if you look at what government is doing, quite a number of tax waivers for the people that want to get into the tourism business. If you want to build a hotel, you'd get some tax waivers on the number of things that you'd use to construct the hotel. If you want to get into the travel business, you'll have a tax waiver for most of the travel vehicles, the vans, the 4x4s. So these are some of the things. And what we are doing as well, because a number of Ugandans were saying that travel is expensive, that accommodation is expensive. But one of the things that we are doing as the ministry, but also as OWA, is putting across concessions. For concession is to give you space to build accommodation facilities in most of these protected areas. And we believe that once you have many, you break the monopoly. Therefore, the price also drops. And we've also segmented the how much we charge for the travelers, for the Ugandans. And I think this is why we focused on domestic tourism. Because like we told you, COVID taught us, when the PS was giving you the numbers, I mean from 1.5 to only 400,000. I mean some people completely closed the business. And we are saying the only way we can, and it was not only COVID. After that we had a bit of challenge with Ebola, we have a few challenges now. So how do we keep this sector afloat if we don't encourage the Ugandans to travel when the foreigners cannot? And that's how we said by having this sector more resilient and keeping the private sector in business is by promoting domestic tourism. And therefore we created specific packages for the Ugandans, probably around 20,000, 25 for most of the Ugandan travelers if you're entering our parks. But a foreigner will pay around, a foreign non-resident will pay around $40. This is over 5 times more than what the local will pay. So really the main drive is to create awareness about the beauty of the country, to change the mentality that travel is expensive, travel is very cheap. And indeed, out of the young people, because we've been moving in groups of 400 and everyone is sharing the experience. And indeed, a story has been told that any Ugandan can travel, especially the young people that we have. Government has put in place good infrastructure. Most of our roads are tarmac from any part of the country. And that's why we say that even the smallest vehicle that can be afforded by our young people, be it a small Vitz, if you sit in a group of 3-4, and you put fuel of 100K, you will drive up to Maction Falls and back straight tarmac. So,
on that point, I want us to return after the break and we talk about the campaigns and you build onto the same. Because I also have some comments coming along here, quite a number of comments from our viewers. I do have Watmon who says, how can, if the minister can help us understand how much it takes for one to access the beauty of our national parks countrywide. That question is going to be answered after the break. Kayondo Ibrahim, CEO Trip Addicts, asks about the plans that the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities has for the domestic tour operators. That will as well be answered after the break, as well as some other comments coming along within our WhatsApp here on UBC's Front Bench. For those of you who are still watching, keep it here, because after the break we have more conversations coming up. Stick around.
And women. These are our ministers and permanent secretaries at the front bench, representing the various ministries and answering the questions that matter to us. Join the conversation. This is the front bench.
Welcome, traveler, to the adventure of a lifetime. Rare, beautiful, and precious. Embrace the unique, unforgettable, and extraordinary. Come and explore Uganda, the pearl of Africa.
The Office of the Prime Minister advises caution as heavy rainfall peaks across Uganda, affecting regions like West Nile, Southwestern, Western, Central and Elgon. The current wet conditions, which bring both positive and negative impacts, require preparedness from government entities, businesses, local governments and the public. For ministries, departments, agencies and businesses, it's recommended to review business continuity plans to maintain the movement of goods, services and essential personnel. Health facilities near vulnerable areas should be stocked with essential supplies. The Directorate of Water Resources should monitor water levels and provide public updates on flood risks. For district local governments, districts in high-risk regions should identify safe evacuation sites near affected communities, ensuring these are not in schools to avoid disrupting exams. Adults should accompany children crossing flood-prone areas, and schools should permit attendance only when safe. Households and institutions should trim nearby tree branches to prevent potential property damage. Local disease surveillance and water quality checks should be heightened, and district disaster management committees (DDMCs) should share timely early warning information. For the general public and communities, motorists are advised to reduce speeds due to slippery roads and poor visibility. People should avoid crossing flooded areas until water recedes, and those in flood-prone zones should stay alert for warning signs like surface cracks. The advisory encourages using the rains to boost agricultural productivity by following best farming practices. This advisory aims to bolster sector-based preparedness and response action across Uganda to mitigate the impacts of floods, landslides, and other hazards.
Welcome, traveler, to the adventure of a lifetime. Rare, beautiful, and precious. Embrace the unique, unforgettable, and extraordinary. Come and explore Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
This is the Front Bench.
Well, it's good to have your company this evening, and thank you very much for being part of the show, The Front Bench. We are exploring the various strategies that the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities is putting forward to ensure that Uganda cements its place or continues to be known as the Pearl of Africa. Okay, that is going to stay forever. But then the other is to ensure that we are having that position as a global tourism destination. Now, I did mention we will be going into some of the questions here, and I'll go direct to the Minister to answer and speak to most of these questions that we do have. Honourable, on the issue to do with domestic tour operators, are there plans for these particular tour operators that are running domestic tourism to ensure that they stay in business and also push for tourism in the country?
Of course, the plans are there, and they have been there. We've been supporting tour operators. We usually work with the private sector through the associations, not through individuals, and there are a couple of them. Actually, as we speak, we are revising most of our MOUs that we had with most of them, but we do support them, we are discussing to see more, because we've actually noticed that most of the people who are also selling domestic tourism are the young people. I think they have a forum called Uganda Tour Operators and a couple of them. But we have engagements to see how we support them, even beyond supporting them as a group now where all the tour operators are. And this discussion will continue. But we usually give them permits every year so that it's much easier for them to also participate and compete with the high-end, with the tour operators that have been in business for some time. So it's a discussion we are still having, but as ministry, through our agencies, we always work and support the private sector. We support them to go for exhibitions abroad where we can, and a couple of other interventions. So it's not something that we are not doing. We are doing, and we will continue improving as we also grow our budgets and our tourism numbers.
Okay. And someone mentioned about access to the national parks. How accessible are they? Because many Ugandans believe going to these game parks or going to these tour destinations is a bit expensive for them. Once they see taglines in US dollars, at times it becomes a bit scary. How accessible are they?
No,
the affordability.
They are very accessible. As I was telling you, the most expensive park must be around 25,000 Uganda shillings. The foreigners are the ones who pay $40 and above. But also for Ugandan, I don't want you to only look at national parks. If you want to have fun or go and experience, you can go to, and government, like the PS was saying, they've put infrastructure in place. It's a free ferry from here to Kalangala. You can go to the source of the Nile. Source of the Nile we are charging, I think, it's now under renovation, but it's a minimum fee. If you want, you can go to Wake, to the zoo. The zoo must be around 10,000 shillings for Ugandan, and you'll see most of the animals there. For the kids, it's around 5,000. If you go to the museum is now closed for refurbishment, but the fee was very small for Ugandan. Still, I think it was around either 5,000 Uganda shillings. So don't only focus on the parks. There are so many other things you can travel, go and experience. You can go to the Nile, for instance. You experience water rafting. For us as government, we'll charge you nothing. You only pay the private sector. So there are so many things you can do privately, where what you'll incur will only be your transportation from one place to another. But like I have told you, and to the young people, that 25,000 is fairly affordable to most of us. I know, because I move around and I see what we spend our money on. But also UWA has come up with a program just I think 2 weeks ago. We had the open park day. It's around 2 days, where every Ugandan was allowed to access the parks, and we are going to continue doing this, and even some transportation and tour guides provided for you to go at no cost to experience and tell the story. But travel indeed is cheap, and the infrastructure is in place for you to travel with ease.
All right. And Piers, there's a question here coming in from Nzabandora Paul Hatega from Chisoro Municipality. He says, the bad tourism roads have led to the poor performance within the region. And he says that the people who are responsible need to do need to go across the country to check on those roads, especially in Chisoro. And what would be your comment on that?
Well, I think the comment I would make goes back to what I had mentioned earlier.
Okay.
We have a list of all the roads. And by the way, that particular area that he's talking about, which is where we have the mountain gorillas, Kisoro and Bwindi area, is what brings in about 60% of the revenue that comes from national parks. So it's a very critical tourism area for us. So we have mapped all the tourism roads in that area that need to be worked on. But like I said earlier, we've been working, within the available resources. Just before we started this program, the minister was telling me that today in cabinet, they were looking at the list of the roads. Now there are roads, particular roads that I think he's referring to, which they are under different level of procurement. Some of them are being, put up for adverts. Others, contractors have been found. Others are being designed. So those particular roads are going to be worked on very soon. So we know them. We've mapped all of them. Every quarter we share the list with the Uganda National Roads Authority, and so they give us updates on where they are. So those are very key tourism roads, and they're in our plan.
Okay. And there is a comment here. This one says, she didn't leave the name. She says, we need to understand what the ministry has towards community-based tourism, sustainable agriculture, and tourism. And on the same regard, this goes to the minister. We need to also know, how is the ministry promoting sustainable tourism practices in general? Because this is something that is really out there in the open, and we need to understand how.
Maybe I'll start with that and end with the question. Well, of course, there are so many things, especially to promote sustainable conservation, and as a ministry through Uganda Wildlife Authority, if you look at the Uganda Wildlife Authority Act, we dedicate 20% of our park entry fees to the communities neighboring the parks. So and it goes direct to the very parish, not the sub-county, not the district, but the actual parish neighboring the parks. And we've seen some districts getting over 1 billion shillings, 1.4 billion, 3 billion. And this money goes directly to help the communities for whichever purpose they want to use. They sit in groups, they discuss, and they choose on how to utilize this money. Some have even built, infrastructure projects. Some have taken kids to school, whichever. So this is one of the interventions that we use because we believe that conservation can only be successful once you have the communities as your frontline base for you to have this done more sustainably. But we also support groups. We have a number of projects. We had the handcrafts project sometime with a number of donors. We do a couple of trainings. We support through, like the PS was saying, now we are going to the local governments to make sure that we help them profile most of these sites, but also engage. We go ahead and even deal with beyond only the local governments, because we have some MOUs with some of them to manage some sites. We also work with the cultural institutions in a number of areas, Buganda Kingdom, if you look at the Kasovi tombs and what we are doing, if you go to Bunyoro and the rest. So even through the leadership of these communities, we have engagements that we believe trickles down to the actual lowest person, so that they see the benefit of tourism. But talking about, I think the person was trying to talk about mainly maybe agro-tourism and actually, the recent World Tourism Day, we gave an award, I forget the name, but one of the ladies doing agro-tourism, I think around the Mukono area. But we know a couple of people that are doing this. We support them, and the support shouldn't usually, and I want to tell everyone out there, don't only look at the money bit. You can come, and we've dealt with so many. We'll give you experts to discuss with, to guide you on how to manage your business and grow it over time. So agro-tourism is one of the things that we are doing. You said you were in Mbale the other day.
Yes.
If you go to Mbale, actually, there are a number of tour operators that are selling just the coffee experience from the farm to how you transform it into a drinkable product. And most of these are part of our people.
Actually,
we talk together.
Malewa for the first time.
So we've worked with most of these groups where we can, and we'll continue engaging going forward.
And there's something about, there's a question here, PS. This one says, how can we maintain tourism confidence during uncertainty? Richard from Soroti. And at the same time, he's asking, how can we ensure fair distribution of tourism revenue as the people in Soroti? How do they benefit?
Starting with his first question, I also want to put it back to him and to all our listeners that it is our duty as Ugandans. And it is a very big duty, because sometimes we work as if we are working against ourselves. We are the ones who share all the negative information, the bad videos, and yet we have a duty to make sure that our country is, the image of the country is protected. And I'm not saying that we should not share, but how we share and how we manage. For example, when we look at COVID, I think it taught us that the Ugandans can sustain the tourism sector because the Ugandans started traveling and going to all these places. So sustainability, and during times of difficulty, apart from COVID, we've had a few challenges the minister was talking about. We had Ebola, now we have Mpox. But you will see somebody taking a fake picture of a patient with Mpox from DRC and saying it is a Ugandan. So I think it's our duty to make sure that how we communicate is very important. It's not only for the ministry, it's not for the PSN ministers, but we need to communicate. And now with social media, you know, we need to be mindful about how we communicate. Okay. But now back as government, of course, how we communicate, we need to have a harmonized approach towards communication. But we're also engaging especially the foreign missions. We've had challenges with the travel advisories where something happens and those advisories affect tourism, because then they affect how tourists get insurance to travel to Uganda. So we have to always engage internally and externally using our missions abroad to make sure that, you know, we manage these challenges together.
Okay. Minister, I do have a comment here. This is Daniel Odong from Northern Uganda. Say thanks for the program, and he says, how about on the issues to do with animal killings? I think he's talking about the poaching because he says some people are destroying things like food, others are destroying animals or wildlife. And he's asking, what are the initiatives, what plans does the government have? Because it seems this will also destroy tourism if we do not take action.
First of all, I think that question is twofold. We usually talk about the human-wildlife conflict. Sometimes it is the wildlife getting out and getting into communities, destroying gardens, and it has also caused some upheaval here and there. But government has been working over the couple of years, probably 4 or 5, through the initiative by His Excellency the President. We are doing some electric fences in Queen Elizabeth. We are doing some in Murchison Falls National Park. And we've made a case before government, which the President has supported and given a directive to increase the electric fence around most of these protected areas so that we keep the animals inside and reduce on the conflict. But we also have what we call a compensation scheme that is provided for under the Uganda Wildlife Act, where of course there is no compensation adequate enough really for life in case you're killed by a wild animal. But we've been having the cases. We've lost members of the community. Of course, we usually go work with them, especially support the barrier arrangements. We also give a small amount of compensation to the victims, both for death and injury. Death is maybe, I can have another day to speak to the actual figures. But of course, then on the other hand, we also have the people that get into the parks to kill most of this wildlife. And of course, the best way to resolve this is the consistent education to the people around the parks, that common conservation is good for all of us. I have had some people saying that government, especially in communities around the parks, that it seems government loves the wild animals more than us. But it is not true. I mean, if you look at the Uganda Wildlife Authority mission, I think, or motto, what they use, is conserving for generations, really. The minister here does not own even a monkey or a small elephant. Or these resources are for the Ugandans. Just like they were handed over to us, it's important we protect them so that even the generations beyond 300 years can find them. But also those that do not have a chance, like the Europeans, can come, have a chance to look, but also leave a big contribution. If you see how much tourism contributes to our GDP, even now that we are recovering out of COVID, because we've not yet reached our full levels. But I think last year we contributed around 5.5% of the entire gross domestic product as only tourism. We're employing over 610,000 Ugandans. And we are saying directly in only the tourism sector. So we employ around 5% of the entire employable workforce in tourism alone. But if we go indirect, probably we have around almost 2 million Ugandans we're employing.
Okay.
So we understand the threat that this conflict can have either way to most of these achievements we are speaking about. We are saying that in the next probably 10 years, we should be able to bring in, I think, around maybe $5 billion as tourism revenues. We can't speak these figures if we don't speak to these conflicts and continue conserving this wildlife, but also protecting the nature so that we bring in these revenues. Okay,
and Honorable, I have 2 questions here. One is talking about the zoo prices. This one mentions that the Uganda Wildlife Education Center doubling the prices from 10,000 to 20,000 is one that has become a bit tricky, because if a child has to pay, it becomes a bit fair for a Ugandan child. So he wants to understand what leads to the increase of these prices. And then the other is the domestic tour operator, Kampala citizen, who asks about, is there any plan whatsoever for domestic tour operators and those who are dealing with fuel stations to help them on the pricing of the fuel, because it is costly for them as domestic tour operators?
Well, now for the domestic tour operators, because even when you're a tour operator, you are in business like any other Ugandan. I don't think the government is going to create a different price for you who is in the tourism business, and a different price for someone who is transporting beans or matoke from Mbarara to Kampala. I think really that is nature of what business is.
Okay.
You just have to up your game and see how you sell better, and provide a better service, maybe charge a little bit higher so that you're able to make a small profit margin. So that may not be for me really to resolve, but hopefully with time I see a number of interventions that government is putting in place to make business very easy for any young Ugandan or grown up, not only in the tourism sector, but across. The second question was
On the work fees.
on Uganda Wildlife Education Center fees.
Yes.
Yes, I saw maybe the PS can but I remember the discussion was there. I don't know if we finally approved. I think it was supposed to come back to us. But I want to assure all the Ugandans that, especially for the Ugandan, that whatever fee we charge really, especially at the Uganda Wildlife Education Center, is not mainly to make actually profit. Is mainly to share the conservation knowledge.
Okay.
So that so many Ugandans grow up knowing it. So we will we can communicate the actual prices, but they are still low. I don't think they are to the figures that the question bearer is speaking to.
Okay, and PS, you've also mentioned in your submission earlier about how Uganda's home to the wildest mountain gorilla population. When you look at half, we have the numbers really, and the statistics speak for themselves. But one may wonder, how is the government, balancing wildlife conservation as well as tourism growth to ensure that we have that sustainability?
Before I go to that, I wanted just to supplement what the minister was talking about, the zoo, Uganda Wildlife Education Center. And he had already told you that has now become part of UA. But just to tell Ugandans out there that they should visit the zoo, because as we speak now, most of the facilities have been improved tremendously.
Okay.
Government put in about $4 million in the zoo alone to improve the infrastructure. So we've done very many new things. So if you have not visited UWEC, please go, take your children, and you'll love the experience. Okay. Now back to your question, conservation and tourism, and I think that's why the ministry was put together like that. For us, we feel that they work together, because tourism depends on what you have to offer, the experience. And that's why we said that we promote, but we cannot promote. People will not come to see nothing. They will have to come for an experience. So the mountain gorilla is, like, I would say, our prime product. And like you rightly said, we have more than half of the total population of the mountain gorillas in the world, because we share them with Rwanda and DRC. But more than 53% is in Uganda. And so, like the minister said earlier, we promote ourselves as we have the big 7, and the gorilla is a prime product. So watching the gorilla, if you have not got to see them and seeing how close they are to us as human beings, I think is a lifetime experience that whoever comes wants to come back and tells others about it. So it's our prime product, and it is a duty that we all have as Ugandans to protect the gorillas and make sure that the numbers don't decline, because they are also they are not highly endangered like right now, because they are really protected. But we have a duty to protect and promote them as a prime product.
Okay. And Honorable, I need to also know, the viewer needs to also know, what are those major challenges that the ministry is facing, and do you have solutions to address most of them?
The first major challenge that the ministry is facing are some unserious Ugandans that are part of us. Yes, because like I was telling you, I think the biggest issue is how we communicate. Okay. It is sometimes it's defeatist when a Ugandan, like the PS was saying, gets a video of someone affected by, unfortunately, maybe a disease outside Uganda, a Ugandan, and he picks it from there, he sends it on social media and says, this is Uganda, do not come. Even when you look at the political parties, and we engage most of the time, and you really ask them a question, because if we don't agree politically, for instance, you don't go and say that therefore everything in this country should go down. There should be no visitors coming to Uganda. I see some players going, I can even name, I mean, this may not be the right forum. Okay. But when we have some of our important ambassadors, I know one of the political players who was hosted in Hollywood the other day, and for all the minutes he speaks, he cannot say that, by the way, Uganda is the pearl of Africa, it's beautiful. So when you collapse the business that we are saying that we're employing, if you look at directly and indirectly, almost 1.6 million Ugandans. So now when you go and spread misinformation out there and discouraging the foreigners to come and bring in this 1.2 billion US dollars in foreign revenue, you then, what happens when there's no travel? These people lose jobs, they support families. We buy food from communities as people who run hotels and most of these lodges. So that is one of the biggest challenges, and I want to encourage the Ugandans that this country is here, it is ours, and we are going to end up here. Even when you're in Europe, going to Europe for whatever reason does not make you an European. You still stay as a Ugandan and you've left family here. So the issue is how we communicate as Ugandans. I still want to encourage the Ugandans, please, whenever you have some time off, travel. The marketing of this country can only be done by we. There is no one else. There is no government official who should carry that burden. It should be every Ugandan's burden to be proud of this beautiful country and share a message you didn't even create. If that Muzungu came here and he said, this is the most beautiful place on earth, you have no right as a Ugandan to say no. So that's where the challenge is. But we'll continue marketing and want to thank the young Ugandans that we are seeing. We see a lot of presence on social media. We see people from all walks of life. We move with the, influencers, celebrities, musicians, and they are speaking positive about what this country has to offer in tourism terms. I think that's the major challenge. The others, government is working upon, clearly. The infrastructure, like they were saying in Kisoro, the few kilometers, in most of those roads are actually being worked on, but also the various aerodromes, like the PS was saying. If you're now a rich Ugandan and you don't want to go by road because maybe Kisoro is far, we have around 4 flights. Yes, there are around 4 flights every day going to Kisoro for mainly gorilla trekking. We believe they will grow with time. So you can fly. It's around between, I think, $250 to $300 a return ticket. So the others government is working towards. We had a bit of a, especially, and people overlook security. Okay. Security is very key. Where there is insecurity, there is no tourism. They just don't mix. So when people are protesting here and running around and saying if you come, it's a big challenge. But we want to thank government that it has created the enabling environment, including the tax waivers and the rest I was telling you, to make sure that, because like I told you, we as government create the platform. The people that run the business in tourism are the private sector. So I want to thank government that they've done what they can. We still see, especially now that they've prioritized tourism, we see them doing much more to make business and growth for the tourism sector easy for any player in the tourism sector.
Well, Honorable, I'll be taking those as your parting shots because we're running out of time. And thank you very much for your time. Let me head to the PS. PS, in your parting shots, to the viewer, what plans in the next 5-10 years does the ministry have to sustain the numbers and also increase on the arrivals of tourists in the country?
Well, I think I had already alluded to that earlier, but maybe in conclusion to say that I already said that government has prioritized tourism as one of the 4 key growth sectors that will bring Ugandans into the money economy. And so government is putting more funding in tourism, in marketing and promotion, in conservation, in skilling, in product development and diversification. And so as a sector, those are going to be the 5 areas. And so the plans are working, of course, with the private sector to grow the tourism. But even what we are doing tonight is part of the plan. We want Ugandans out there to know what is going on and to tell them that they are part of the people that must market the country. And you cannot market what you do not know. Okay. So encouraging Ugandans to travel, go and see, enjoy the country, explore, and also tell the world.
Okay. And well, indeed, exploring Uganda is something that we all need to do as part of our mandate as being part of the Ugandan community. My guest this evening has been the State Minister for Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, Honorable Martin Mugara Mahinduka. My apologies. Thank you very much for joining us, Honorable.
Thank you.
And with him, he has been moving with the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, Doreen Katusime. Thank you very much for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Joram. Thank you for the discussion.
I don't know where you first visited in Uganda, because my first experience of tourism was in baby class, Didi's World. I was told it's now back. I've never taken my chance to go back there. But then I also visited the zoo, and followed by the COVID-19 pandemic that introduced me to a friend of mine called Kayondo, who is also a domestic tour operator, who introduced me to Jinja, Makshon Falls, Chisoro, and I'm looking forward to heading to Kidepo though. But that said, next Monday we shall be having the Ministry of Works and Transport, and I think they will speak directly to matters to do with the infrastructure that the ministry has been speaking to here, and the efforts, all the plans to ensure that the tour destinations as well are part of the plans for works and transport as well. But tonight the focus was on tourism, and again, thank you very much for being part of us from the time we started at 8:30 p.m. till next Monday, same time here on your national broadcaster. I'm Joram Paul Ssonko. All the best for this week, a happy new month, and a good evening.
This is the front bench. Fellow countrymen and women, these are our ministers and permanent secretaries at the front bench, representing the various ministries and answering the questions that matter to us. Join the conversation. This is the front bench.
Welcome, traveler, to the adventure of a lifetime. Rare, beautiful, and precious. Embrace the unique, unforgettable,